Hello everyone, I'm Travis Chingo here with Tom Quinn, and with the first 3 videos that we did in this series, we went over your time and health, energy and matter, and then discussed anabolic and catabolic. So in this video, we're going to talk about foundational health, and Tom, this comes from the information that you put together in the foundational health plan, which is available on our website, healthwaysfoundation.org, and you can go there and download the foundational health plan there. So Tom, taking everything that we've learned in the previous videos, how do we bring it into a whole body concept?
And that's a good point. We should. I think it's really important to understand health from a whole body concept. There's just a proclivity and propensity on the part of people in our society today to microscope things, to think about health as, well, I've got arthritis, or I've got this disease or that disease, I've got this condition, without really understanding that the body's failing in a big sense. There's systems failing when that starts to happen. Those things don't take place unless the body's really starting to give up earlier on. And that's what I think people need to see, is the body as a whole body concept. So it's good that we discuss that. And I think the fundamental part, or at least the very first part of understanding that, first step, is to understand ourselves as part of an energetic universe. The energy that exists in the universe, we're very much a part of. I mean, we draw our life from the earth, and that earth is there to serve us, to serve that back to us. So it's important we understand how we are part of that energy. We used to, in our society, we used to know, or at least to believe, that the rules of the universe were particulate in concept. There was a Newtonian physics.
Everything is particles.
Particles. Everything was particles. Everything was made up of particles. And science spent a good amount of time trying to search for the smallest particle. Well, war was a big driver in technology, and it became necessary for discussions around how to get great power for war, and that centered in on a splitting of the atom. And science knew there was a great deal of energy in the atom, but they didn't know how to go about taking it apart to get it. And that's what Einstein, Oppenheimer, and several others had to discover. And when they actually went into trying to discover how to split an atom, they had to discover the true nature of an atom. And it wasn't particles. Atoms at one time were thought to be the smallest particle. Then they discovered protons and neutrons and electrons. Mm-hmm. And that's what made up atoms, and that's why we saw them as atoms, because of these smaller particles. And then they discovered that those particles were made up of smaller particles, neutrinos and leptons and quarks and bosons, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. The point being that until the true nature of what we think is physical was truly understood as energy, they couldn't split an atom. They had to understand the nature of true atoms, of the atomic structure of what we are. They had to understand the true nature of the quantum universe, and that was energy. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. And from there came the equation that Einstein developed: E, energy, equals mc squared. M being mass, or a given amount of matter, c squared being the speed of light, squared. Mm-hmm. That happens to amount to 34.9 billion miles a second. So the speed of light squared is pretty fast. If I can take a given amount of matter and move it at that speed, I will have turned that matter completely back to energy. And it's interesting that it begins turning to energy before it reaches that speed. It completely is energy at that speed. But prior to that, it starts to go through a metamorphosis from what we see as physical to energy. It starts to disappear. It's really quite amazing, but that's the nature of the universe we live in. So we come to understand that it isn't physical matter that we're dealing with, it's energy that we're dealing with, and we must come to understand our health based on energy. We draw energy from the universe. We draw energy into our energy. Nothing really happens inside the human body that doesn't require a positive or a negative charge. Those are usually ions, positive ions, negative ions, but the positive and negative charges keep things moving. Mm-hmm. So it's electrical nature, electrical matrices that keep us functioning. and biochemically sound and moving along the path of health. So we've got to come to understand that we truly are energy. I mean, let's take a look at some of the most fundamental basic forms of energy and how they relate to health. Let's look at water. If I take water, the molecular structure of water is H2O. Two atoms of hydrogen attached to one atom of oxygen gives a molecule of water, H2O. That is absolutely vital for life.
Absolutely.
You can't live without it. If I take one more atom of oxygen and add to that H2O structure, to that electrical matrix, if I take one more electrical particle, a positively charged atom of oxygen, and add it to my H2O, I now have H2O2. It doesn't seem as though I've done much.
You just added one oxygen atom.
Well, that's it. That's it. Only one atom of oxygen added to this mix. So what damage could I have done? I've just turned water into hydrogen peroxide. I don't think you can live with hydrogen peroxide. As a matter of fact, I know you can't. You can't drink it, you can't substitute it in your body, and it won't allow you to live. It's biologically toxic to you. So by adding one piece of electricity to this established electrical matrices which our DNA calls for, I've made it so that it will kill you. I can't emphasize enough that we are energy functioning in an energetic environment, in an energetic universe. And our life is energy.
Absolutely.
So it's really, really important to understand life from that standpoint. And I mean, when you look at the Earth gives us back our, let's take a look at what the Earth gives. The Earth is made of 75% water. Mm-hmm. So are you. So am I. The human body is made of 75% water. Every cell in the human body looks for a 45 to 65 millivolt charge of magnetic energy. 55 would be optimal, right in the middle. Mm-hmm. If it goes below 45 or above 65, the cell dies. Over 65 is excitotoxic. Below 45 is hypoxic. It just dies. It looks for 55. The Earth delivers a 55 millivolt charge of magnetic energy.
Imagine that.
There is no coincidence to it. The blood of a plant is its chlorophyll. When we take that into our bodies, it cleans our blood. That is not coincidental. The very nature of our being relies on the Earth. We give it carbon dioxide, the plants give us back oxygen, and we all get along just fine. We draw our life from the Earth.
There's a symbiotic relationship.
A very symbiotic relationship, a relationship we could not do without. Mm-hmm. And it entails the electrical nature of life. It entails, again, what we were talking about. Us as energy. When I eat broccoli, and I take that food, I'm going to get from that food sulforaphane. That sulforaphane will come to me when I biologically break down that broccoli in my body and turn it into the components that the DNA is asking for. That sulforaphane will go inside of my blood now and begin killing any cancer cells that it can find. It destroys malignant tissue. It reinstitutes the apoptotic mechanism in our body, which destroys tissue that doesn't look or act right. Autophagy, it reinstitutes that, which takes cellular debris and bad stuff and remanufactures its good parts and gets rid of the bad. It gets it. That sulforaphane coming from broccoli. Where did that broccoli get that sulforaphane?
From the Earth.
It drew sulfur from the Earth, remanufactured it so my body could understand it and use it, gave it to me. I broke it down and used it to kill my cancer, or to set my genetic processes back in order so that apoptosis was now a more robust feature of my genetic defenses. And I got that from the Earth via the plants. And it all had to do with positive and negative charges within my body. And all of that took place. We are energy, and we draw that from the very Earth that we live on. And that makes us responsible for obeying the DNA code that was written within us. The DNA code is the genetic prescription for what must take place within you for you to have life. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And there's nowhere in that code where is it written for Celebrex or Xanax or any pharmaceuticals. They're not written into that code. There's a lot that we do to ourselves that it's not written into that code. And consequently, that code, if obeyed, would give us the health that it guarantees. We look for good health and well-being, being in love with life, waking up with a smile on our face, being ambitious, being healthy without disease. We look for that. And our DNA code says it's all written right there. So it's important for us to know that that DNA code expresses itself genetically throughout our body. So the genetic expression is DNA in motion. That tells our systems and everything what to do, what it needs, how to act, where it needs to get its nutrients, how it needs to process them, how it needs to combine them, what systems need to get what. The DNA code is the master regulator. The interesting part is, well, there's a tendency on the part of people in society to believe that their genetics is predetermined them to either be sick or not.
Right. And there's nothing you can do about it.
And there's nothing you can do about it. That couldn't be further from the truth. Certainly, we inherit the sins of our fathers and our forefathers. Yes, our genetic code has been scratched. It wants to go stupid in the wrong direction.
But that's our starting point.
That's where we start. It wants to move. If we were to maintain proper homeostasis, it would never get there. But because we live in a society, we don't understand much about ourselves, and we understand more about what McDonald's has on the menu than we do about what our DNA is asking for. We indeed turn around and don't give ourselves what the DNA is asking for, and we end up subterfuging our own health in that regard. So the genetic code is necessary to express, and we have, this is what science has discovered, the ability every 4 hours to control what that genetic code does.
And as we talked about in the Health and Time video, we talked about the fact that what we do over time obviously affects our outcome and our path on that. So we're changing our genetic expression every 4 hours.
Exactly.
Are we changing it for the better, or are we changing it for the worse?
Exactly.
And multiplied over years of time of doing that, what do we end up
with? It
with?
takes you in one way or another.
Exactly.
And that's why it's very hard to turn that back again. You can't just stop at the end and say, well, wait a minute, I'd rather have it the other way. You took a long time to build what you got, which it may not be much, but that's what you get. That's what you ended up with. So, yes, it's over time. And I think the very important part of this is not only do we have the power to change that every 4 hours, which is not an ability, it's an obligation. The DNA code is written for health, and it's our obligation to give it what it wants, and we're obligated every 4 hours to do it right. If we do that, over that period of time, we will get the health that we're after. And I think it's really important to emphasize, too, that period of time that we're traveling, our most finite, valuable resource, is what's called aging. We age over that process. And science has discovered that aging occupies the same pathways as disease. They both are the same thing. They emanate from the same place. So as we age, we're headed along the pathway that institutes diseases. If we early on begin stepping in the middle of that and demanding healthful homeostasis and proper genetic expression for ourselves, we alter that end result so that it's favorable for robust health and well-being instead of degenerative disease. If, on the other hand, we ignore that process and we ignore the DNA code and we don't do what's written and we do what society tells us we should be doing, we should like that fast food, we should like those things and indulge ourselves in sugar and whatever. If we do that, we end up with the opposite. We bring that aging process not into robust well-being, but we bring it into destruction, and we bring it earlier into our life. We're experiencing the diseases of chronic aging in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, when a natural aging process without application to genetic expression would bring us there in our 60s and 70s and 80s, and as opposed to a genetically appropriate approach which has us robustly healthy in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, we're diseased now because of the way we live our life and our failure and our obligation to our DNA and the genetic expression that we control every 4 hours. It's that simple. So.
All right. Well, that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to part 5 where we continue this discussion.
We'll consider genetic control.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.